After spending a few months living in France, my boyfriend and I were sitting in the back of an Uber leaving the Detroit airport in complete silence. The temperature was below freezing. The highway was covered in muddy snow. We drove past strip mall after strip mall, and chain restaurants were everywhere that completely lacked personality or passion. Basically, a completely different world than the one we just had left behind. We were exhausted from traveling and honestly a little bit heartbroken. We both knew it was time to leave France. We also knew we wanted to get back there as soon as possible. Walking into my parents' house that night felt like a deep exhale. My family was so happy that we were back in the US, and I was so grateful to be with them because I'm really close with my parents. But the next morning, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, everything got quiet. I was replaying the last few months in my mind. The slow mornings, the long walks, the way France had cracked me open and shown me who I actually am when I'm not hustling. And this thought landed clearly. I cannot lose what France gave me, and I can't wait until I get back to start living that way. Maybe you haven't lived abroad, but I'm guessing you've had a version of this, a vacation, retreat, even a conversation that showed you how you actually truly desire to live. And then we get home, we settle back in, and old patterns start to reemerge and creep back in. The spark of clarity or inspiration we felt gone, swallowed up by the everyday rush of life as if it never happened. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if coming home didn't have to mean living your life exactly as you had before? Today, I'm sharing how I'm building a life I don't need a vacation from right now, even though I'm not where I want to be. Welcome to Lately with Lexi, where I help wellness brands grow and spiritual seekers evolve. Every episode explores spiritual wisdom, business building, or personal reflections from my life. Come hang out as I share what I'm creating, learning, and navigating as a yogi, business consultant, healer, and entrepreneur. Make sure you subscribe on Substack so that you don't miss an episode. And if you are in Sarasota, Florida, send me an email if you'd like to attend my next in-person workshop. It will be March 22nd for the spring equinox. Now, let me take you back to France for a moment. My boyfriend and I were walking along the Seine one evening, and I started sharing with him how exhausted I was, not from traveling, but from striving. I had spent years trying to balance everything: my career, my health, my spiritual practice, my relationships, and no matter how hard I tried, something always felt like it was getting neglected. And I remember saying to him, balance is such a fallacy. It's this unattainable thing that keeps us running, feeling guilty when we slow down, and stressed when we want to speed up. What I needed wasn't more discipline or a better system. I needed more room for pleasure, for joy, and for just being myself. And that's exactly what I'd been witnessing in French culture. French women don't rush, and it's something I've always admired about the French that's difficult to name, that je ne sais quoi attitude. I had a mentor once tell me that queens don't rush, and that's exactly what I saw living in France. These women meandering through the city, enjoying leisurely lunches on a random Tuesday, always ordering dessert, no guilt, no apologizing for taking their time. They weren't trying to balance anything. They were just enjoying themselves. What I actually want, it's not balance, and I'm guessing it's the same for you. It's harmony. Balance is external. You're constantly rearranging the pieces, trying to make everything fit, whereas harmony is more internal. It's a state that you cultivate regardless of what's happening around you. I didn't come home trying to rebuild my old life or rush to get back to France. I came home to build a new way of being. And that's what today's episode is really all about. What it actually looks like to embrace living differently when it comes to all aspects of your life, your career, your daily rhythms, and your relationships, even when you aren't exactly where you want to be. Coming home from something expansive is a risk because the old version of your life, it's right there, ready to swallow you whole. The same routines, the same environment, the same patterns that you thought you outgrew. And if you're not intentional, you'll slip right back into it without even noticing. So when I came back to the US from France, I made a decision. I wasn't just bringing memories home with me. I was bringing France itself, the habits, the pace, the values, not the croissants or architecture, unfortunately, but the way I felt when I was there. The slowness, the presence, the permission to enjoy my life without shaming myself or feeling guilty for slowing down or embracing more pleasure. And honestly, losing my biggest consulting client right before France is what made this possible. If you listened to last week's episode, you already know that story. And at the time, it felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath me when I lost that client. I was freaking out. I had no idea what to do next. But what it actually gave me was space that I hadn't had in years, space that I needed. And I used that space to get radically honest about myself, my career, and my future. I looked at all of my skills, talents, and passions from consulting, teaching yoga, doing healing work, this podcast, and I asked myself why I'd been trying to limit myself to just one, or worse, trying to balance them all equally, which, as we just talked about, does not work. So I stopped trying to balance and started designing my life around harmony. And I borrowed something else from France to do it, the idea of seasonal living. In France and much of Europe, you eat what is in season. We don't do that so much here in the US. This approach is very similar in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic living. Think strawberries in the summer, root vegetables in the winter. You don't force things to grow when it's not their time. And I started applying that same principle to my career. In the fall, the energy is all about the harvest, finding gratitude for what's already working and doubling down on those things in your life. For me, that meant pouring my focus into this podcast, and I've been able to sustain producing a new episode every week since I created space for it because I was intentional. Now, as we start to shift into spring, the energy changes. It's about action, momentum, planting new seeds. So this spring, I'm focused on improving my French before my next trip to France in September. It doesn't mean that the podcast falls to the wayside by any means. It just means my priority is shifting to something new. Right now, my day-to-day looks like healthcare sales and consulting work during the week, teaching yoga and offering one-on-one energy healing sessions and intuitive readings on the weekends and in the evenings. And most importantly, I carve out time for what personally fills me up and gives me energy. Think morning sun, long walks, French lessons, and writing. My life and schedule even is not balanced by any stretch of the means, but it is intentionally designed and very, very Lexi. Intentionally designing your life, that's actually the easy part. The challenge is not losing yourself when you're still in between where you are and where you want to be. And what's helped me the most might surprise you. Gratitude. I know it can sound like the most basic advice in the world. Write in your journal, count your blessings, be grateful. We've all heard it 1,000 times. But I'm not talking about gratitude as a concept. I'm talking about gratitude as a daily practice. One that actually changes the way your brain works and shifts the energy you're putting out into the world. And here's what I mean by energy. Everything is energy. You've probably also heard that. Our thoughts create energy, and that energy vibrates at a specific frequency. You can put out a frequency of fear, doubt, or worry, or you can choose one that's more aligned with how you actually desire to feel. Think love, peace, inspiration, joy, creativity. The gap between where you are and where you want to be can feel really heavy at times. And if you're not careful, that heaviness can spiral into negative self-talk. And that can impact not only your energy and mood, but the frequency you emit out into the world. Luckily for you, I am going to share 3 simple gratitude practices that you actually might not be familiar with that you can start today to quickly shift your energy and tap into that state of gratitude. So grab your notebook. You're going to want to write these 3 things down. The last one is my absolute favorite, and it's certainly one I never see talked about, hardly at all, if ever, and it's my favorite. Okay, so the first gratitude practice is the bare minimum, okay? And I mean that. This is the floor. When you don't have energy for anything else in your life, do this one thing. Before you fall asleep and right when you wake up, your subconscious mind is the most receptive to the inputs that you feed it. So in bed, right before sleep, and then first thing when I open my eyes, I mentally recite at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. And you want to do so with feeling. So What does that mean? Well, you want to focus on your heart space, bringing your attention to the center of your chest, that space where you first feel, and just notice. Can you feel your heartbeat? Is it warm? Does it feel soft or expansive? You're not trying to force anything. You just want to notice, and noticing helps to expand this energy of gratitude and radiate it outward into your electromagnetic field, your radiant body, so even penetrating beyond time and space. The key here is not to just name gratitudes like it's a list. You want to connect to the feeling. So get really specific. And if you're having a hard time, think about recalling things that you're grateful for that make you feel your best. It could be something as simple as an accomplishment you had the day before, or somebody in your life that you just want to send gratitude towards. Practicing this is such a game changer. And again, the key times are right before you fall asleep and then first thing in the morning. This practice is incredibly grounding, especially if you're navigating a life transition when everything else feels like too much and I can't meditate, I can't do breath work, my whole spiritual practice gets thrown out the window. This is the one thing I come back to. Okay, now if you have the bandwidth to take this a step further, I highly recommend journaling these things out, the things that you appreciate, that you have gratitude for. There's something powerful that happens when we put pen to paper. It helps to rewire the neural pathways of the brain to cultivate greater coherence with your brain, your heart, and this state of gratitude. What we focus on grows, and writing it down puts you in the driver's seat. You'll start to consciously choose what you want to grow instead of letting your default patterns run the show. Okay, and the third practice is one that's been the most transformative for me personally, and it comes from one of my all-time favorite personal development books on this concept of self-image, Psycho-Cybernetics. Maxwell Maltz calls this the theater of the mind, and Carl Jung also explored something very similar. So here's how it works. You write a journal entry in present tense from the perspective of your future vision. Not what you hope will happen, but what is happening. You write about what's going well, how you feel, how you act, the type of person that you are, and you give gratitude for your blessings already have received them. And here's the thing, you don't want this to be another practice on your to-do list. You want to find pleasure in this journal exercise. So maybe that looks like lighting a candle and getting lost in this vision. This practice of the theater of the mind is energizing and inspiring. Personally, I have a hard time keeping up with writing everything that's coming through in my mind. And that's really the excitement you want to tap into when you're doing this practice. The theater of the mind sets the tone for your day. So I highly recommend doing it first thing in the morning. Personally, it reminds me to be her now, be my future self now. We want to think and act in accordance with our future self because that's the thing that helps to collapse the distance between where we are now and where we want to be. I'm going to recommend that you try this theater of the mind out for 7 days. You can do anything for 1 week. Try this and just see what shifts, see how you feel, and let me know what you think. Florence Scovel Shin said, if you have a vision, it can be yours. And I really believe that. Sometimes your vision just needs time to integrate into your life. And the theater of the mind really helps you to do that. All right, so we've talked about how gratitude shifts your inner state. It really does. But if you want this shift to last, you have to go a layer deeper. You have to look at the beliefs and thoughts that are running on autopilot underneath everything else. James Clear said in Atomic Habits, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Now, personally, I would replace systems with standards because lasting change doesn't come from setting better goals. It comes from the standards you choose to live by. And those standards depend on your internal dialogue, so your beliefs and your thoughts. That's why this process is so crucial when it comes to wanting to achieve anything big in your life. We have to look at the beliefs and the thoughts that are running the show. So if you want to change your standards, you have to start by addressing those things underneath. So here's one personally that haunted me for years, and I'm wondering if it's relatable for you. I've had this belief that says, If I'm not where I want to be yet, something's wrong. This one followed me across every city I have ever lived in. So from Detroit to San Francisco, Nashville, Paris, Sarasota, you get the picture. This belief has lingered in the background of my life, and I would try to ignore it, but it would always surface as frustration. Something as silly as a loud chihuahua barking next door would turn into, see, this is exactly why I don't like living here. And once you start looking for evidence that something is wrong, you will find it everywhere, trust me. So the new belief that I've practiced replacing that old one is I can be grateful for exactly where I am while I'm building towards what I want. That one sentence gives me so much permission to feel peace, contentment, and joy now, even when my life doesn't look the way that I necessarily want it to yet. And when I'm in that state of gratitude, time expands. It almost slows down. I have more energy. I can create without forcing things. And this is where my favorite simmer analogy comes in to play that I learned from one of my yoga teachers in New York that you've probably heard me mention before. So if you're cooking and you have everything on the stove turned up on high at the same time, something's gonna burn. You have to adjust the heat. Some things need your full attention right now. Others need to stay on the back burner, simmering, not forgotten, just not the priority in this moment. Our dreams work the same way. Coming home from France taught me that it's okay to reprioritize your dreams. Sometimes that's exactly what you have to do in order to realize all of them. So personally, for me, France is not off the stove, but it is on the back burner. It's on a simmer, and that's okay. Tim Ferriss talks about the minimum effective dose, the small input that still produces a result. For me and France, that's 30 minutes of French daily, and also reviewing my finances on a weekly basis. If you think about it, this isn't a lot. It's not a big commitment, but it compounds over time. And I'm trusting that consistency is stronger than intensity. Now, I know I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. I follow the wheel of the year and align my vision with the energy of each season. It's a way to bring more introspection and intentionality into how I move through my life. And I pray a lot. I surrender my vision to God, this or something better. It's one of my favorite mantras because sometimes what God has in store for us is far greater than we could ever plan for ourselves. Allowing your dreams to simmer means not taking them off the stove before their time. It's a lesson in trust, in deep surrender, in making space for the universe to conspire on your behalf without needing your own force or willpower. Here's what I want you to walk away with from today. Coming home doesn't mean going back, whether it's from a trip abroad, a retreat, or even just a conversation that showed you how you want to live. You don't have to lose that. You get to bring those values, that peace, that pace, that vision of yourself and your new way of being home with you. But it takes intention. Design your life around harmony, not balance, and give yourself permission to take this seasonal approach. Not everything needs your full attention at the same time. Gratitude is more than a mindset. It is a daily practice, and it's the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And start with the bare minimum. 3 things you're grateful for before you fall asleep and when you wake up. Focusing on your heart space. If you have the energy, journal it. And when you're ready to go deeper, try theater of the mind for 7 days, right from your future self. See what starts to shift in the here and now. Listen, your dreams do not have an expiration date. Mine certainly do not. Let them simmer. Not everything needs to be right here, right now. Trust that consistency is stronger than intensity, and trust that sometimes reprioritizing a dream is exactly how you make space to realize all of your dreams. You don't have to wait until you get there, wherever there is for you. Just start living like the person you want to become. You can be her or him right now, right here, wherever you are. That is all I have for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Lately with Lexi. If this episode resonated, please share it with a friend. I'd also love to hear from you. Leave a comment on Substack or write a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you want to book an intuitive reading or energy healing session with me, all of the links are in the show notes below. I have some new openings and availability in my calendar to take out some new clients. So just reach out if you are interested. I would love to work with you, and I will see you guys next week.